Hello, I'm Samantha Nolan-Smith, and this is Lessons in Visibility. In this show, we ask what can be learned from the two faces of visibility. The first involves stepping forward and choosing to be seen and heard. The second opens you up to new ways of seeing and hearing the world around you. Welcome to the show. Today, I'm sharing some wisdom from one of our students inside Women Speaking Up, Kim Banks. She is a coach for women who are interested in building micro businesses. And I really love that Kim's passion is giving people permission to not build enormous businesses, but to see a micro business as an absolutely legitimate business vehicle. I think it's a particularly useful thing to consider if you have any capacity issues in your life and you've been looking at all these people who are talking about building enormous sized businesses and just thinking, I can't do that. That in no way matches up with either the time I have available or it doesn't look like what I want to build at all. Or if you have any chronic illnesses, if you are living with a disability, or caring for your elderly parent or parents, or building something as a side hustle, micro business could be absolutely the way that you want to go. So if that interests you, please check out Kim's work. I will put the link in the show notes. And I'm going to share with you some of her insights and then jump back in with some reflections of my own.
When I came to the program, I had this awareness that something wasn't working for me and I could not figure out why. And all the intense fear and not understanding why everything that everybody else was doing was fine. They would do their thing and they'd go out there and it'd all be fine. And I was sitting here struggling and internalizing a lot of it as what the heck is wrong with me that I can't do these things. And so coming into the community, it just started to help me have awareness of there were things working against my desire to be visible. And it wasn't actually anything wrong with me. It was ways that I was being asked to do things that go against how important integrity and safety and consent are to me. And so because I was coming out of a program that caused me a lot of personal trauma and activated my awareness of these things, there was a growing awareness that there was not enough awareness in business culture around why women struggle with visibility and not enough awareness around creating conscious business practices that do not trigger and activate people.
So this is something that historically we've spoken a lot about inside Women Speaking Up. Certainly we will speak about it in the second half of 2024. I think this is such an important consideration and one that's really never discussed in traditional business circles. And that is, how is our gendered experience impacting the way that we want to run businesses and how we feel about the advice that's given about how to do that. And there are many layers to this. And I really love the layer that Kim brought up, which is the consent layer. And so often in the business world, there's advice around marketing, which is very, very pushy. And in fact, goes against everything we know about consent and sexual assault. And you might be thinking, what on earth are you talking about? How do these things relate to one another? So I'm going to link an article that I wrote about this a while ago into the show notes so that if you are really interested in the link between these things, then jump on over to that article and have a look. For now, the takeaway I want to share is really that visibility is an issue for women, not because women inherently have an issue with visibility. It's because of the gendered conditioning we have experienced around the sexualization and objectification of our bodies, judgment of our voices, not seeing ourselves in positions of authority and leadership. And so all of these elements are really important elements to look at if you are a woman working to be more visible in the world?
So that started being like, this is happening. I was noticing it everywhere, but couldn't quite still make the visibility because the second phase of my journey was the embodiment and to understand why things that I should not feel fear about would create fear and lack of safety. It made it difficult for me to be in groups. So the program supported me with the structure to get to know what my rhythm was, what my pace was, to get to know the ways that I was working against how I'm naturally wired or what my true nature was. And then learning how to translate all this awareness into, there's such an emphasis on expertise, but for me, it's energetics and experience. And we don't talk about that in business. And it was like, well, how do I do these things? And a pivotal moment was when you, Sam, had said to me, well, if it doesn't exist, maybe you're meant to create it. And it was like, whoa, what the hell is going to happen now? But that was kind of like the light bulb that I needed to then start to be like, okay, well, what if it is me? What if I am the person that's meant to do this? And so all the what ifs and what now and what else. And then again, learning to regulate myself with what kind of visibility is this going to require? How do I resource myself for that so that I can share and that I can stand for these things that are not going to be popular opinions? That I'm going to go against the grain of business culture by saying, yes, women can have micro businesses and they're beautiful containers to incubate your ideas. Yes, micro business is beautiful for people who have diverse needs, everybody from the disabled community to women who struggle with illness and women who are recovering from trauma and their business activates the ways their trauma is unhealed and then they don't know what to do with that. So, advocating for more trauma informed business, more conscious business practices, and knowing how I can hold space for that when there are going to be people that are going to challenge me, that are going to disagree with me, and finding ways to express that for myself. My mind is beautiful and it does beautiful things for me, but the way it was dominating the way I work versus the way that I work through my body first, how my body needs to be considered because I do live as a highly sensitive. I live with a disability. I live with chronic illness. It makes challenges for me, but within those constraints and limits, I have learned that they're like detours and setbacks that send me in the direction that I'm meant to be.
So I want to bring you back to that point that Kim makes in the beginning of this section, which is, okay, so I had worked through some of the gendered issues and still there was something that was stopping me being visible. And it was because I hadn't been through the embodiment phase yet. There's a whole episode inside this season about embodying your message because it's such a critical part of the visibility process. If you have behavioral patterns, for example, that are out of alignment with the message that you are here to share, you're not going to be fully embodied in your message and you're not going to be in a full state of ease around that. Now, that looks different, obviously, for every message. But if you've got a message around simplicity or empowerment, or let's say your message is around slowing down, for example, then the way that's going to manifest is you're going to start to see all the ways that you overcomplicate things or that you're acting in ways that aren't the most powerful version of yourself. Or you're going to see all the ways you're rushing through life. And whilst you're doing that, what you might find is that you feel like a little bit of a fraud. But as I said in that episode about embodiment, this isn't a sign of fraudulence. It's a sign that you're working through the embodiment process and you're coming to be a much deeper expression of the message than you have been in the past. And so remembering that that stage is so critical in the visibility process is something else that I'd love for you to take away from this episode. Thanks for listening to Lessons in Visibility. If you'd like to connect in other places, come on over to theschoolofvisibility.com. And you can also find us at The School of Visibility on Instagram, Substack, Facebook, and Threads. Lessons in Visibility is produced by the School of Visibility on the land of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people. I acknowledge the peaceful legacy of custodianship that tens of thousands of years of coexistence with the land has bestowed on us all. And I note the visibility journey that remains unfinished. Voice, treaty, truth.